Time to cross the T's and dot the I's with the rest of the week's top stories. And joining me now is business advisor Carol Roth, best-selling author Larry Winget in person, and former McCain-Palin presidential campaign advisor Ford O'Connell. And let's start off with California. They are apparently getting ready to allow hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants receive driver's licenses. Will that just encourage more illegals to cross the border? Because, Carol, with a driver's license, you can go in and vote. You can do all kinds of things with it.
Right. Well, if you don't give illegals the driver's licenses, how are they going to drive to and from their illegal jobs, Tom?
Well, hopefully they have if they're from Mexico or from Guatemala or wherever, they have one of their local licenses. I don't know. When you go to Europe, you can drive with your American driver.
I feel like this is such a California thing. When I lived in California and you went to the DMV, they offered the driver's licenses in a bunch of languages that weren't English, some that didn't even use the English alphabet. And I feel like if you can't read the street signs, you probably shouldn't be able to drive. So I think that California really is missing the entire mark on the driver's license.
California does have a reputation for kind of their own beat of the drum, but Larry, should we just scrap the immigration rules altogether?
You know, to me, undocumented worker means illegal, and illegal means criminal. And criminals shouldn't get a driver's license. And it's really very simple in my mind. And a driver's license is a privilege, and it's a right. And in this case, it's a reward. And to reward illegals and criminals is the wrong thing to do.
It opens up so many doors. That's the thing about it. And Ford, that's the thing. You can talk about voting and everything else out there. It basically just shreds the immigration law. So it seems like either let's enforce it or let's scrap it. What's your case?
Well, I think it's ridiculous, and obviously this is a result of President Obama's deferred action political gimmick in an effort to curry favor at the ballot box with Hispanics. Unfortunately, though, I can't stop California from doing this because the driver's license is protected under the 10th Amendment. But I do respect states like, Texas, Nebraska, who have decided in Arizona that they're not going to do this. It's really up to the states to decide this because it really falls under the 10th Amendment. But, it's a wait and see. And I think depending on which states sort of draw the line in the sand, I think this whole mess could wind up in the Supreme Court. And this is what we get because President Obama decided to use a political gimmick to curry favor at the ballot box and didn't think this out.
Well, it's obvious. It's politics. There's nothing else but politics.
And we need to settle the issue. Either we're going to take these people and say you're illegal and you can't be in our country anymore, or we're going to say, we're going to find a path for you to be legal. We're going to make you legal. We're going to give you a driver's license. You have to make a decision.
I agree with Carol. I think our immigration system's broken, and we really need to have comprehensive immigration reform. And until we do this and just tinker around the edges, we're all kidding ourselves.
They keep saying that, though. They keep saying we need comprehensive immigration reform. They can't do comprehensive anything, Larry.
That's right. But if any state's going to do it, it's going to be California. So I think it's going to be a wait-and-see thing and then see how it sort of spills out into the rest of the country.
Right, with the bullet train,
That's a good point. Maybe that's the laboratory and we say, look what happens when you do this. So, all right. We've also got, as we mentioned earlier, Apple now the most valuable company in U.S. history. Why do people love Apple but hate other big corporations like number 2, Exxon? Larry, this anti-corporate people just love it, Apple.
Why wouldn't we love it? They bring us the iPhone and the iPad and the iPod, and it's all white and it's slick and it's packaged. Plus, that's a corporation with a face. They had Steve Jobs, and this is sort of a tragic death, and we can all say he was a passionate visionary. The others are big, mean, ugly corporations, especially oil companies that get in your pocket every single week. Yeah. What's the love about it?
Yeah, but Ford, listen, the oil companies, I use oil and gas just as much as I use my iPhone. I need them.
Well, that's exactly right. I think part of the reason why Exxon is hated is because progressives on the loony left have just decided that they, don't like, Exxon and companies like that because they see them as destroying the environment. But I think that Exxon is truly underappreciated because we don't realize that in 2008 they flipped a $116 billion tax bill on $45 billion in net profit. And frankly, 50% of Exxon's owned by mutual funds, index funds, pension funds. They're really holding on to our retirement in and supplemental income. So essentially, I think that Exxon's underappreciated. And I do think that Apple gets too much love, but frankly, I like both of them.
It's very simple. Everybody's tuned into their favorite radio station, which is WIIFM, What's in It for Me. And they see they feel like an emotional connection, not only to Apple, but to Disney and Kraft and a lot of these other big companies that do something for their ego. Commodities like Exxon or even the financial services companies, they don't see that connection. And people focus on emotions, not rational behavior. So this is not a rational argument.
No, it really isn't, but it's fascinating to talk about anyway. Speaking of fascinating to talk about and irrational, what's wrong with burying your wife in the front yard? I mean, dear, I'm only joking. An Alabama man is fighting to keep the town from digging up his wife's grave and is determined to let her rest in peace right on his front lawn.
Now, I've went my whole life. I've never been arrested, never had a ticket, never been in no trouble. But that's subject to change if somebody thinks they're going to come in my yard and start digging up my wife. It ain't happening. Not in this century.
I believe him too. Ford, you want to bury your wife in your front yard?
Look, my heart goes out to Mr. Davis. Unfortunately, I think he's going to lose this one because, essentially government regulations are going to trump sort of his want and use of personal property. That said, though, I think that, this is an interesting situation given that where he's from. And this sounds like an odd story to a lot of people in the metropolitan area, but in that corner of northeast Alabama, they've got a real frontier libertarian view of property rights. And I think a lot of people feel sympathetic for Mr. Davis beyond his wife dying.
We're getting a lot more libertarian in our country, Carol.
This is exactly why I live in a condo, Tom, because there's limitations on what your crazy neighbors can do, and there's no place to bury bodies. I think that you need to have a plan if you're going to do this. Bury it in the backyard and don't put up the tombstone. That's why everybody caught. People do this all the time with Fluffy and with Fido.
Sure.
If he was just quiet about it, it wouldn't have been such a problem.
Is that the answer?
Carol,
Just don't tell the government what you're doing.
I think the answer is to have zoning, and maybe this little community that he lives in should have an emergency meeting to pass some zoning laws so you can't bury dead people in your yard. I think he has a lot of rights here, and I think he's going to lose this one, and it's kind of sad, and I feel bad for him, but I do believe that his neighbors have rights too, and it's going to cost them in terms of property values. So he's going to lose it. I'm sorry, and I hate to see how it's going to play out in his life.
But the thing about it, Ford, and this is partially tongue in cheek, but dead people don't cause a problem. They're quiet. They're good neighbors. What's the problem?
Well, I think a little bit as the zoning ordinances and potential sanitation problems that could result of this. The government's going to win this case, and it's really unfortunate. But, to Carol's point, in some states you can't bury Fluffy in the backyard. So, again, it's really the government's
You can if you don't tell anybody.
That's right.
That's true.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll leave Fluffy quiet and peaceful, and we hope the gentleman finds peace as well. Carol Roth, Larry Winget, Ford O'Connell, thank you all very, very much.